Aloha and welcome back to Ukulele Corner. I often get asked a lot about how to get tone out of the instrument with the right hand when you're playing the ukulele. And I find that when I first have students starting out, I always encourage that they play without fingernails in the right hand. Fingernails can give you more brightness in your sound, a lot more volume. But that warmth and connection, feeling the strings with the right hand when you're first learning to play, I think is really essential. I like using fingernails for the variety of tone that you can get. So when you get to that point and you feel comfortable, you've made good contact with the string, you've practiced for a while, you've developed your ability to play, you can experiment with them and see how it works out. But there are a couple of pointers I want you to follow that I think are really essential. And the first thing that I'd mention is instead of just letting your nails grow, you have to very carefully smooth them out. If you go outside and do some yard work, let's say, and you come back in and try to play with nails, they're going to be all coarse and rough and your sound's going to be thin and brittle. So having a way to smooth the nail out is really crucial. And also the angle that you shape the nail can really help influence your sound. So as I mentioned in the beginning, using the flesh of the finger gives you a really warm sound. And I have a lot of students start out that way when they're first playing. And so what I mean by that, if I grab my ukulele, if I play with my thumb, let's say in the pad, the fleshy pad part of the finger, you get this really warm, full, rich sound. Now if I introduce the thumbnail in, I have a thumbnail that I use, and if I only use a nail, it's a little bit thin sounding. It can be very loud. You can really dig in like you're using a finger pick. But hear how that's a little bit thinner than this warm. All flesh with the fingers gives you a more rounded sound. So here is a big pointer that can really help you. You can get the best of both worlds. And you do this by creating a ramp from left to right with each of the fingers. I like to use my thumb, index, middle, and ring finger. I use my pinky, but more for strumming. I let a little bit of nail grow there, and I file it down. But I don't usually pick the string with that. It's more of it's the raschiato strum of extending the finger outwards. For thumb, index, middle, and ring, though, I try to use a nail file and file from left to right so that you play the string on the left side of the finger, right on the tip. As you move through the string, the nail makes contact and brings out that volume, but the fingertip gives it warmth. So it's sort of a hybrid in between that warm sound of all fingertip with the really bright and loud sound of all the nail. Let me demonstrate before I show you how to shape your fingers, just so you can get this in your ear. If I play with index finger and I play all nail, because I shape my nail from left to right, I'm gonna play on the right side of the nail where it's really, there isn't much fingertip there to help out. It's just going to be all nails. And I'm going to play the third string, the note C. A little bit of a harsh sound when you have that all nail. But now listen, if I add the fingertip in, I play more off the left side of the finger. The hand naturally falls that way on the strings. Whoa! What? You get a warm sound with the volume. So it goes away from this and becomes this. But I still feel the nail and making that contact. The string just swooshes, it glides off as the finger moves, that ramp of the finger that gives you volume. Without that thin sound, if I play the high string, it's like A is going to sound very, very thin. So I think of it like a stereo. If I want to get brighter, which can be a really powerful sound sometimes, like the stereo, I turn to the right and I get a little more treble. If I turn to the left, I get a little more bass, a little more warmth. So I can have a real warm sound, or bright sound. Oh, I could add in some bass by adding more fingertip and having that ramp. So I highly recommend this. If you're going to use nails, don't just go flat across the top. You have to go from left to right. You can kind of curve the contour of the finger and this will still work. I find having more of a sloped angle can give you even more sound and more volume with that warmth. If you don't do this, your nail, if you play off the side, it's going to hook on the side of the string. It's going to catch on the string when you play. So I do the same thing also, I mentioned with my thumb. Before I was playing with the all flesh, and I love that sound. I use that a lot of the time. But if I want more volume, I just lean the finger back a little. I have that length in the nail. Now you can hear it. A little bit brighter, a little bit louder. Here's all flesh. So you can really change your tone. Let's say I have a melody that I want to be very prominent. While there's a bass that's going to be very soft, I'll use the fingernails for the fingers, but I'm using the flesh for the thumb, so you can hear more brightness coming out and the melody's going to cut through more. Another technique that I like using, thinking of nails, is strumming, all with the thumb going down, all flesh, and then index finger coming up. That works nice for jazz. Or if you want, let's say if I'm doing a Hawaiian strum and I want it to really cut through. That's all fingernail, that's all using index. So just as the same sort of technique we use with strumming, with all flesh versus all nail, you can get that effect with your fingers. So let me show you now what I do to shape the nails and how I get that tone. And the first thing you want to do is get a nail file. I have a glass nail file here, but any kind that you can find will work fine. And I just get one that's not too coarse, so it doesn't eat away the nail too quickly as you're filing down. But what I try to do is I get under the nail and I file from the left side of the finger, as I mentioned, towards the right. I try to make that slope. And if you curve your fingers in like this, it's easy to see that. And I just try to make as far of a ramp across the finger as I can. I find it's easiest for me to do this in the index and the middle finger. I do it a little bit more rounded on the ring finger. It's just the way the shape of my finger is, just works that way. So I file that. I do the same with the thumb. I file from left to right. Kind of round it out too. And I try to, with the thumbnail, I file the right-hand side too, just so that the nail doesn't break. It sometimes can break on that side. And make sure it's not too pointy in the middle. And so you can experiment, see what works for you. It really will make a difference. And you can experiment how it feels, how long you want the nail to be. I don't go very long with the nails. They just basically clear the very tip of the finger just a little bit. Now, after you do that, a really essential thing is not just using the file, but I use a sandpaper. And you can get the sandpaper, I believe it's called Trimite. It's 500 grit. It's from a website called Strings by Mail. That's where I order it. And it's very inexpensive. Like I'd say $5 for 5 sheets of it. It'll last you forever. I take this, I cut it up into little squares, and then I take the squares and just, after I've filed, I just do the final touches to smooth out the nail. And that's where the magic happens. There's no resistance when you play the strings after that. It just makes it incredibly smooth. Your fingers just float right through the string and you get that tone. So going from that really thin sound, you're adding the bass back in, but still getting the volume of the nail. And now that I've used the file and the sandpaper, it just breezes right through. It's amazing. So see if you can try to use different ways, experiment with what works for you. But I definitely like doing that ramp from left to right. Some people just make a curve around the whole fingertip. But anything that you do that takes off the edge and allows you to get a little bit of fingertip in there as you play. The way my hand position falls on the string, I'm really making contact. If you watch my thumb, it's right on that left side. Index is right on that side. It's not in the middle of the nail. It's on the side of the nail. That's where you're going to get your tone from. So I hope that really transforms your tone and you have fun exploring your nails and playing the ukulele.